This is light work. Come on, spill the tea. Yeah. Ooh.
Hey y'all,
What's good?
I'm Laura.
And I'm Dee. And welcome to Spill the Tea with Laura and Dee.
What are we chatting about today?
I'm glad you asked. Our Candid Convo for today is, are you really moving to Atlanta?
No. Nobody's really moving to Atlanta.
So we've lived in Georgia for you've been here for quite a while.
I've lived in Atlanta since 1986.
Were you born here as well?
No, no one else is ever born in Atlanta.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was born in Alabama. People always ask, they're like, "You're born here?" It's like, no, not Grady Hospital, not North Side, no.
Not the baby factory.
Right, but I was born in Montgomery, and then my mom was tired of Alabama, and she was like, "We're moving to Georgia," and so we stayed in Cobb.
So your mom moved here when you were little? Mine did too. That was kind of she wanted out of South Louisiana.
Whatever, yeah.
She wanted out of, which kind of leads us into our topics, is why do people move to Atlanta? So first, they don't actually move to Atlanta. Most people move to the surrounding area.
The outskirts.
Correct. And one of the biggest draws are the job opportunities here. Right? And for a long time, I think a lot of the jobs were truly in Atlanta. And so you saw your suburbs growing. Alpharetta has always been a hot city to live in. Johns Creek was just voted top city in the U.S. to live in.
Right.
Our school systems up here are fantastic, but the job opportunities are now spilling outside of Atlanta, which is allowing our suburbs to grow.
And it's wild because you have Synovus Bank, which I never knew. There used to be a bank I used to pass by, CB&T. And I used to get it mixed up with BB&T all the time. And I'm like, what is
that's
CB&T?
Like 1990s things.
Yeah,
You're
but
not even old enough.
That's Synovus.
Oh.
It's just a bank out of Columbus. And so now it's like this big, Synovus Bank. People recognize it. And I'm like, yeah, well, they have an office in Atlanta. They have an office in Columbus, right? When people come here, it's in Cobb, right? So when people come here to work for Synovus, they're either moving to Columbus or they're moving to Kennesaw, they're moving to Winder, they're moving somewhere that's, not quite so Atlanta.
Right. Not all the traffic.
Exactly. Right. And then Duluth has been picking up a lot of different employers.
Yeah. So we have a big medical industry here in Atlanta. Right. I love candy. Candy's amazing. We have a big medical industry here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
There's the tech industry is growing. I mean, Amazon is
everywhere.
Spilling out everywhere. Amazon is buying up all of this land in some of our more rural cities that are starting to grow.
Right.
But the job opportunities here are endless. It doesn't matter what sector, what industry. If you're in the movie industry, I know the movie industry is starting to see some changes because of AI. And so, we even have all those sets down in the south end of Atlanta. We're known as the East Coast Hollywood. I mean, the job opportunity is just fantastic here. It doesn't matter kind of what you're looking for. There's going to be something for everybody.
Right. Atlanta, in my opinion, is kind of fun. I feel like more and more people are open to driving into Atlanta.
I'm getting clients willing to have that New York feel,
Mm-hmm.
LA feel 2-hour commute, right?
Right.
And they're doing it because of the property you can get, right? And the amount of home that you can buy here in this area. I mean, that's another reason that people move to the Atlanta area.
Mm-hmm.
Price points. While if you're not from Atlanta, our prices suck right now because we used to have little bitty baby prices where our luxury when I started 10 years ago, luxury
like 500,000.
Well, it was a little more than that. It was $750.
Oh yeah.
Luxury in Atlanta was like $750.
That'll get you livable in Cobb.
Right. Prices have more than doubled in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because people are moving,
right?
For the housing prices here from cities that are much more expensive and not nearly as affordable. And so
you're right, because $750 wouldn't make it in Texas or California. I mean, it would. You could just $750
in California.
Oh my gosh, you'd be like, oh no.
It's
are there any other options?
I mean, people buy that as renos, right?
Right.
When you're watching HGTV. Christina and Tark are like, we only paid $625 for the house.
Yeah, it's like only.
I'm like, only? I want to sell mine for that.
Right.
Right. So I think people move to Atlanta. The housing prices, huge driver.
Right.
And because we pull, number 3 on that list is the diversity and what there is to do here.
Right.
And so we have a nice diverse city spilling over into our suburbs. Our
Right.
suburbs are becoming the city. And then that's allowing these smaller suburbs, these smaller cities to really grow. And so it's been fun to watch the transition over the last 20 years. I mean, I've been here since the 80s. So I've been here forever. I grew up here. I have now officially raised kids here.
Right.
I'm almost done. I'm on the 12-month countdown. I'm sad and excited and a lot of things all at one time. But I raised my kids here and I'm now raising grandkids here. Or at least they visit here. And so it's fun to have all the things to do and to see the cities grow. But the cities are growing based on what their residents want. Right? And so you're seeing some of these smaller cities that are just repopulating. You're seeing a younger generation there. So there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of shopping, a lot of walking, walkable, a lot of parks, a lot of outdoor family.
Douglasville has signs on I-20 now. Talking about eat, live, play.
Correct.
And I'm like, oh, I see it.
Correct. It's very fun to watch because the cities, they grow as their residents want them to grow.
Right.
So like if you're up by Halcyon, you are into
Cornhole.
Correct. If you're into cornhole and those outside games, like Halcyon does a whole big setup of that. They have like outdoor goat yoga. They have cornhole tournaments.
A lot of these breweries too will do a lot of that too.
Correct. Well, they've got a brewery right there at Halcyon, right?
Oh,
so it's all kind
enough.
of right there. You go to some of these squares and you're starting to feel more of that square feel where restaurants have patios, people are out, the dogs are out. Right. Everyone's kind of a community, lots of homes close to the city squares again. We're just getting back to kind of that lifestyle a little bit. It's kind of cool to see here in the Atlanta market. Right.
So we've lived here for quite a while. So as we talk about cities, how would we describe Atlanta to someone that's not from Atlanta?
Well, I would say that Atlanta is an hour from Atlanta.
Right. So there's a song, it's really funny, and it's like Sorry Not Sorry, and she talks about like not Atlanta, Johns Creek, not Atlanta, Alpharetta, not Atlanta.
I think I've heard it, yes.
And so one of her lines is like, if you didn't grow up in the APS system, you were not from Atlanta.
Correct.
And I'm like, well, if you think about it, growing up, I was always confused. 285, which kind of is the perimeter around Atlanta. It's almost like when you know that, it's like, oh, well, everything inside is Atlanta. It's
That's
like,
ITP.
well, no, not right. It's ITP. It's not Atlanta. It's ITP. Right. And it's just like you have such a concentrated area that's Atlanta. And you're in Atlanta when they start talking about Atlanta neighborhoods. Right. Like they start saying Lakewood next to the amphitheater. You start talking about like Peoplestown. You start talking about, I forget what's right next to Peopletown that's blown up like so fast recently.
It's not Cabbagetown.
And Cabbagetown is a neighborhood, right? So it's like when you start talking about those neighborhoods, then you're in Atlanta.
Correct. Right. Atlanta is very small, like very, very, very small, just like any big city. It grows to the vicinity.
Correct.
It encompasses that.
Correct. And then to the east side, you have like Decatur, you have Chamblee. You have like
your old cities,
Brookhaven in that area-ish. Yeah. Then going over to the west side, I don't know quite as well. But West End, I think is part of Atlanta. But once you get outside of that, it's no longer really Atlanta. Right? They have cities over there now too.
Correct. It's all growing. I mean, all of that is growing. What you're seeing happening inside the perimeter, though, in a lot of these older cities, is you're seeing the historical districts come in and start trying to preserve.
And I'm actually liking it. Because some of those areas are so unique. Correct. Like West End, almost like when you drive through it, it's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm in the West End. Yeah. So I actually like that they're doing that. I'm interested to see like what some of those rules are. So like if we end up coming across
they don't want painted brick.
That actually I'd be fine with.
They don't want to see their brick painted.
Right.
Some of the other rules that we've seen are if there was a carport, they want it to maintain or be replaced. So if you're going to enclose that, they want you to kind of maintain the structure of the look, or if there was a place to park, they still want the resident to have that covered
Right.
that covered parking because at one point that was found as valuable,
Right.
right? For whatever reason in that little area. Believe it or not, they like the bars on the windows, so they like the look of like kind of the wrought iron on the.
I always
front of the
wondered
house.
when I saw those because sometimes, obviously, that is an indication of a rougher neighborhood. But I've
Correct.
also noticed in some neighborhoods, I'm like, yo, like this neighborhood is
It's
not rough
correct.
anymore.
Sometimes it's just
But then
an
the bars are
aesthetics.
still just there. Yeah.
Correct. Sometimes it's just aesthetics, and sometimes it's just preserving history.
Right.
Right. Sometimes people want, this is what it looked like when it was built. This is what it should look like now. And so sometimes
Right.
it's just about the preservation, whether they love the look or not.
Right.
Right. Just about the preservation. But you are seeing the historical districts come in
Mm-hmm.
and kind of put their foot down and say, hey, listen, we want you to, if you're going to come in and make the city beautiful, we want that. But we also
Right.
want you to maintain what it always was.
Right.
And I think that's kind of cool about Atlanta. I mean, we're known as the city of trees.
Yes.
So that's something.
Yes, they will get you when you put in those plans. What's happening to these trees?
Right. They want to know. They want to know. But it's beautiful, right? Though it keeps the city. It's fun to drive through Atlanta because of that. It feels good to drive through Atlanta because of that. And that perspective, again, spills over into the suburbs. And I was driving through a few areas the other day in downtown Roswell and downtown Alpharetta, where they've, of course, replanted the canopy coverage when they clear the lot. That's part of the rule is if you take down so much canopy coverage, you have to put up so much canopy coverage. So they put the trees back up, and we're getting this fantastic, just old school feel of just I don't know. I just think about kids skipping down the lane with the great oaks touching across. I don't know if they're oak trees or maple trees, doesn't really matter. But that's what it feels like. And so you're starting to kind of see that vision come to life now that the trees in the cities are starting to get seeded and rooted again.
Right. So what would you consider some suburb areas historically versus like what are now starting to turn into
Great question.
suburbs?
So I would say anything that physically touches 285 historically is going to have some kind of history to it, and that's where the suburbs start. Is right out at OTP. If you're an OTP, you are a suburbanite. Okay, let me just be very, very clear. You are a suburbanite. ITP will call you a suburbanite, even though, in my opinion, that layer that touches 285, all of those cities that touch 285 are really now becoming the city. I mean, now Florida, we have 8 lanes of traffic.
Right. Right. It's
That's
wild.
the city. Whereas you're seeing Rome, Cartersville,
Rome
Jonesboro.
has really been picking up.
Rome's fantastic. That whole little bubble up there. Rome, Cartersville, Harley. I don't ever say it right, but Armucci. All of those little towns up there. There's a fake R or something in it. I don't say it right. But all those little towns up there are really, really, really growing. And you can still, buy property for fairly inexpensive for, what people in Atlanta would say is a very good price point.
Right.
And again, they're growing. Our school systems, I mean, at one point you would look at your school and kind of, but I would say that even the school systems that are rated a little bit lower, we're seeing those ratings tick up every single year, right? We're seeing them increase to a better rating. And I firmly believe it's because you're seeing more and more families move to these smaller towns. And when parents get involved at the school level,
the rating start to improve. Correct. Because they've got some oversight, they've got some responsibility at that point.
And they bring equipment.
Right.
Like as parents, when I was at the school, we celebrated.
Parents that care too, of course.
Correct. And we celebrated on our foundation, we celebrated like $1.5 million worth of money raised for technology just in our elementary school. I think the foundation started in like 1999, and that was probably 10 years ago. So it took us a while to get there.
Right.
But as parents, we were proud of that, right? And so when you see those parents and you've got more kids who have one parent at home or who has the ability to have more parents in the school, all of a sudden that starts to be a school that gets focused on because there's more help. The teachers have more assistance. There's just more at the school's disposal when parents are involved.
Right.
And you're seeing that in these smaller towns where at one point it was double working parents. There wasn't that parents love their kids. It's not that. It's just there's double working parents. They don't have the time and the bandwidth. And so we're starting to see those schools really have that parent. It's very cool to watch. I think, I think it's very cool to watch. I think these small towns in Georgia are gonna grow. And if you can buy real estate in Georgia, buy it.
Right.
And I'm done.
So, you know the school systems a little better than I do. There's probably change here in the next several years. but,
Yes.
but North metro suburb areas generally have had kind of better school systems, from my
Correct.
understanding.
Right. Not just North.
Now,
It started in the 80s with North Fulton. Alpharetta and Roswell is where,
right,
if you didn't want your kid in private school, that is where you sent them.
right. But then
Over,
Cobb as well, because you had some
correct,
East Cobb was
which
a
touches
very
Roswell.
similar
Correct.
area.
Roswell, East Cobb kind of spilled over.
Hmm.
So then Marietta started growing. And
Right.
again,
That's when the parents
Alpharetta,
started getting involved too, because I grew up in
correct.
those schools.
Correct.
And it was
correct,
like,
correct.
started off in school and it was like everybody, well, there's always a little aspect of it, but it's just like, oh, this school is terrible, right?
Correct. But over the
And
years, they all got better.
correct.
Correct. And now we're seeing, Gwinnett County wasn't known for its school systems. And right now, Gwinnett County has more STEM programs,
Right.
I think, than most other counties in the state. Like, their STEM programs are superb.
It's
And Beaufort City Schools, like their sports complex,
it's
like nothing. The wrestling department
intense. It's
has its own
intense
gym. It's
in Gwinnett.
bananas. Yeah.
Lexi used to work over there. She
It's
does not want to work over there now, but it's like,
amazing.
yeah,
Like,
it's a lot. It's very high standard.
correct. And so, there's people, a lot of times when you do your research, Alpharetta is going to come up, Johns Creek is going to come up. It's voted #1 city to live in the country, right?
Right.
But once you get a little bit more into your research, I would say most of the families that we work with from out of town are happy to explore, to your point, from Cobb County to Cherokee County to Forsyth County to Fulton County to
Right.
Gwinnett County, right? And again, that's kind of my area that I focus on. And I'm sure there are great schools down in the south end of the city as well. But I like the whole arc, everything above 285. I think no matter where you are, you can find a good school in that county.
Right. I think the only school system growing up I ever heard huge concerns about was like the cab. I think they probably have changed a little bit over the years. I don't know how much, but like the south side, I don't think I've ever heard huge complaints. But in
Just less
areas like,
resources. That's always the biggest
so
complaint. It's what's the financial and less resources. And again, the
right,
more parent involvement you get, the more resources that come in.
right. So the cities that border like 285, like Jonesboro, I believe, like borders, those used to kind of be suburbs, but now it's like that almost has like an Atlanta feel to people now, and so people are
What's
moving
spilling
south
over?
now to Hampton. And in Hampton, like there is just a lot of building going on because it wasn't a lot going on in Hampton.
Right.
And
Well,
a lot of
nobody was
folks had
moving
never even
down.
heard of it. It was just like Hampton, that's too far from work in Atlanta.
Correct. And it wasn't, which is so funny.
Right.
It's the opposite direction. It's not. It's saying actually probably less traffic because there was nobody down there.
Right.
The movie industry is what brought the focus to the south side of the Atlanta market.
Right.
And again, I think the movie industry is definitely not drying up. It's just the face of it is changing with AI and the need for smaller sets and not as much recreation of whatever they're trying to shoot.
Exactly.
But I think the awareness is not going away. Like, just because the movie industry is not moving down there, there are other jobs, there are other opportunities that are moving down there. And I think we're still going to continue to see, maybe not at the rate we were, but we are going to continue to see that trickle even in South Atlanta.
Right. Exactly.
Everybody wants out of the big city.
Yes. You know what time it is?
What time is it?
It is time for question quickies.
What are our questions?
Yes. Today, who determines mortgage rates? So that's a little bit of a loaded question. Mortgage rates themselves, I think there are some bank associations, but effectively all the banks will effectively set mortgage rates. Now, what they're basing those rates off of are going to be based on the rates that the Federal Reserve sets. And those are kind of like, those are internal bank lending rates. So lending from bank to bank, lending from bank to Federal Reserve, so on and so forth. They set those rates. And then every other rate is really kind of built up from there. So as you see the interest rates change, a lot of the times you'll see the mortgage rates change, but that's because the banks are kind of keeping up with the Federal Reserve.
Correct. I'm ready for them to come back down at a high level. But,
Yes.
That is what it is. So I'm actually glad that they're not coming back down. I think the market correction that we're seeing because of the interest rates is going to be good for the market. I think it's going to feel yucky for about 6 months, but I think it's going to be good for the market. And I think that once that corrects, I think we'll see our interest rates kind of calm back down. Slowly come back down, yeah.
I can see
Maybe
that.
December.
Right.
Start to see a little bit of a tick down with an expected tick down again in January or February.
Right.
Now, how often do they look at the rates? Once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year?
So they do if I remember correctly, they do like a quarterly call. That's kind of when they talk through everything. And I believe it's a public call. Like you can actually go and watch it.
I think you're correct.
Right. But yeah, they meet on a quarterly basis. Right. And then what happens afterwards is usually like as they walk out, like all the news folks are there trying to pick their brain and get further details.
Right. What's coming?
Right.
I want the crystal ball.
Right. And that's when you get the ones kind of dancing around the questions, so that's how that works.
Very cool.
Next, is mortgage insurance the same as homeowners insurance?
What about title insurance?
Right. Yeah, there's so many types of insurance.
So why don't we go through each one?
Right.
So mortgage insurance, PMI is?
Yeah, so PMI is basically if you don't have enough equity in your home when you go to borrow for a home, the banks will kind of assess you as higher risk. And at that point, if you're higher risk, they want to be compensated for that.
Correct.
And so that's their way of being compensated.
Correct.
For taking on that risk.
And it covers, they make you pay it if you haven't put down 20% or more, because the perspective is if they have to repossess the home.
Right. There's costs associated
they
to that.
need at least 20% of the value of that home to sell the home without coming out of pocket more money.
Right.
So the PMI covers any additional past that 20% gap.
It's an actual insurance policy too. Like it's wild. Like reinsurance. You ever hear somebody talk about reinsurance? That's an actual insurance broker.
I never heard of that.
It's wild. It's confusing, but basically they're just paying for somebody else to pay for the catastrophic event. So if they have to go and like collect,
right,
whoever they had the PMI policy with, they basically go to them and they say you pay the damages up to whatever.
Right, your portion. Title insurance. What is title insurance?
Title insurance that's a policy that you have when you go to close. And so it's usually with a title company or like a title agent. And so they go through and do all of the title check, all of the back end, making sure there's no cloud on title, making sure it's clean. And then you basically compensate them for that. And then if for whatever reason somebody comes back with a claim after that, then that insurance would kind of step in and kind of help with that event.
Very good. So title insurance, Craig, this is the way he describes it, is the cheapest, best insurance you'll ever buy.
Yeah.
Because there are 2 title policies. There's the lender's policy required and the buyer's policy optional.
Right.
In 10 years, I've only ever had one buyer say no. They didn't want it. And it like every time, I won't tell you who it is, but you know him. Don't say it on camera. Right. You know him. But the homeowner's policy protects the homeowner. If there is a title claim.
Right.
And even though the title company checks and makes sure that there are no clouds, there sometimes are things missed. And the cool thing about your title insurance is it takes care of everything. You just say here.
Right.
And it goes away. And it's so just like 1% or something of the sales price. It's very, very, very inexpensive and you only pay it one time. So I think that's kind of a misconception. I think sometimes people think title insurance is going to be an annual.
Right.
One time.
Right.
It's a one-time insurance. That inexpensive because so few people actually need it. And at some point it may even go away with records, the way we can keep them electronically and all of that now. Because it's, it's easier to see how title has changed hands. Right. Especially if it gets on a blockchain somewhere.
Exactly.
And so there's that. Now homeowners insurance.
Yes, homeowners insurance. So that's the one that usually the mortgage company will pay it. And so that's going to cover any of your like damages on the home, right? And that's the policy where you really want to go through it and kind of understand your area, right? Because you may need hazard insurance, you may need flood insurance, you may need a special type of flood insurance, wind insurance, earthquake. Like there's so many different kinds. And it's funny because you'll sit on there with the agent. The agent's usually like, and you're just trying to think of like, oh man, do I actually need that?
Well,
You
correct.
know, and it's really just based on the area.
Flood a lot of times is what gets people. They'll have a flood
Mhm.
in their house and they won't realize that they don't have flood coverage, and
Right,
it wasn't suggested because they don't live in an area where floods happen, right?
right,
It's a one-off fluke or whatever.
right.
So very good. Well, I think we defined all three insurances very good. I think a lot of people have questions about that, so
Right.
I'm excited that was a question this week.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us today on Spill the Tea with Laura and Dee. If you thought this was helpful and or entertaining, drop a note below. Hit the heart, send to a friend. And if you have any questions for a house flipper or a real estate professional, drop us a note below and we will cover it in an upcoming video.
This is light work. Come on.